Duval. Welcome to Bleav in Jaguars. I'm Bucky Brooks. What's up, Duval? It is Bucky Brooks, your favorite former Jaguar, and this is Bleav in Jags, a podcast dedicated to all things Jacksonville Jaguars. And I got to tell you, I'm really excited because training camp is in the air. By the end of the week, we'll be fully into the NFL season because everyone will be at camp. The Jaguars open up camp the 24th of July, first practice. Hopefully, I'm going to be there and for the remainder of the week, so I'll be able to bring you the latest and greatest insights and information on what's going on with your favorite team. But before we get into that, let's send a shout out to our sponsor. Bet Online is one of the world's most trusted betting platforms and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind on one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet Online. The game starts here. And guys, as you know, we always talk about the game starting here. The game is literally about to start here when we kick off training camp. And training camp is always an interesting time because so much of what we talk about in the off season begins to crystallize and come to fruition in training camp. And so one of the biggest things that coaches try to do is they try to have a set of objectives of things that they want to accomplish over the course of training camp. Now, training camp isn't like yesteryear's training camp where it's 6 weeks and everyone's banging on each other and you're trying to get the team in shape and doing all those things. The general expectation is that the team comes ready to rock. They come ready to go. And that acclimation period is more about, hey, let's get to the execution part of things more so than building them up and getting them conditioned and those things. So with that in mind, I kind of want to talk about 3 objectives that I believe Doug Peterson will have for this team as he goes into training camp. And the number one thing that this team wants to get done in training camp, they want to reestablish the culture. A lot of what took place at the end of last season left a bittersweet taste in the mouths of the Jaguars. This is a team that was at 8-3. They were sitting atop the AFC. And then they lost 5 out of the last 6 games, fell out of the postseason picture, and really, I would say, tricked off a great opportunity to be a team that not only got into postseason, but did some damage. And when you have a season that ended like that, you do a lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-examination, and you make decisions to make sure that you can avoid that fate in the future. So the number one thing that I believe Doug Peterson is going to do going into training camp is make sure he reestablishes the brand. He's talked about it in some way, shape, or form. Look, smart, fast, physical. He wants a team that is super smart, that really takes care of the little things. They're on the details. They make sure they avoid the silly stuff that leads to losses. He wants to take care of that. Last year, things that popped up that were really concerning. On defense, just too many mental errors. Defensive football is really simple, right? It's about alignment, assignment, adjustment. Let's make sure we get lined up right. Let's make sure we understand what our assignments are, and let's make sure we are ready to anticipate any potential adjustments may happen when it comes to a formation change, a shift change, a motion, anything like that. One of the things that he wants to make sure that the defense does is don't beat themselves when it comes to alignment errors. So look for a very concerted and concentrated effort on making sure that the defense is pretty simple. Everyone knows exactly what they're doing. They're playing fast because they're not cluttered and bogged down with a lot of thinking. They're able to play on autopilot. So make sure the team is smart. They do those things on defense. Then offensively, it's going to be taking care of the ball. Let's reduce the number of turnovers. Turnovers just absolutely killed the team in key moments down in the red zone. So that's, hey, Trevor, take care of it right now. We want to make sure that we at least walk away from this drive with 3 points whenever we get into the red zone. Let's make sure we don't gift the other team opportunities with silly mistakes and blunders where we have failed handoffs or drop passes or bobble passes that turn into interceptions and those things. So Defensively, let's make sure we get lined up, know our assignment, make sure we don't have any mental errors. And then offensively, let's take care of the football, no turnovers. And then the last part of that part in terms of reestablish the brand, playing fast. Well, part of playing fast is really related to being simple on both sides of the ball, meaning you want to make sure that the things that you're asking your team to do are easily executable things that are not complex. You're not bogging them down with a lot of like thoughts and adjustments and if then concepts. More so, hey, it's very black or white. If they do this, we're going. If they do that, we're going this way. Not a lot of gray area. So to play fast, you have to be simple. You can't be complex in your teaching. You got to make sure that the players understand it. If this team plays fast, and we've seen this team play fast, we saw them in 2022 play fast, we saw them parts of last season play fast, but it has to be about the simplicity and the organization of the concepts that they're executing on all three sides of the ball to allow this team to play fast. And then the final part of it, and we've heard this not only from Coach Peterson, but we've heard this from Trent Baalke and the front office. Physicality has to be everything. In the AFC, the most physical team wins. As pretty as the Kansas City Chiefs are, as pretty as some of these other top teams are, when it gets down to it in the nitty-gritty of the game, it's about the team that out-hits the other team. Physicality will be a big part of the emphasis in training camp. It's always been a part of the emphasis with Doug Peterson. He likes to run a hard training camp so that he hit the ground running in week one. Physicality has to be emphasized at every level. The running game didn't get on track last year because the offensive line wasn't physical enough at the point of attack, couldn't win or own the line of scrimmage. That was a huge issue when you have the amount of negative runs that they had. It puts you in long yardage situations. It's just too hard to overcome those situations on offense. And so the priority on offense, the offensive line, got to be more physical. Got to finish your blocks. You got to finish your runs if you're a running back. You touch it at wide receiver. You got to finish going positive, going past beyond the chains as opposed to these negative plays that really, I said, undermined the efforts of the offense last year. And then defensively, the physicality shows up in defending the run. At the end of the year, when the Jaguars needed to stop the run, they couldn't stop the run. Some of that might have been scheme, some of that might have been tactics, but to me, it came down to toughness and physicality. You have to be able to play big boy football in the AFC if you're going to be one of those teams that not only in the postseason tournament, but if you're going to be the last team standing in the tournament, physicality has to be your calling card. I think the number one objective of training camp is to make sure the team is playing smart, this team is playing fast, and they're super physical in their approach on offense and defense. If they do those things, I think you can check off a box in terms of what Doug Peterson wanted to accomplish. The second thing that I Bleav needs to be accomplished in training camp is get the pieces of the puzzle together. And so when I mean the pieces of the puzzle, so much of the spring and the off season is about evaluating the personnel that you have. It's looking at what you did the previous year schematically. It is looking at the pieces that you had in place that are holdovers. How can you elevate and put them in a position to do more, to make a greater impact on offense or defense in the special teams sector? So after you do all those evaluations in the spring, after you experiment with some of the concepts that you think may be good concepts, well, training camp is now the time to kind of whittle it away and really, I would say, scale down the menu and to really begin to assign roles to the players that you have based on the expectations for their contributions. All off season, we've been able to look at these players. You've been able to do some evaluation. You've looked at them run around in shorts and those things. Well, when we get to training camp and the pads come on, some players are inevitably going to change. Some guys are going to be better than you anticipate. Some guys are going to be worse than you anticipate. The job of the coach is to make those evaluations, now determinations in terms of who plays what role on this team. Training camp is when you get the pieces of the puzzle together to give yourself the best chance to win over the long haul of the regular season. So all those things that look great in April, May, June, that's great. But July and August is different. When the pads come on, you want to make sure that the guys that were flashing then continue to flash. And your patience as a coaching staff, you're not as patient. The wick on the candle is much smaller. You don't have a tolerance for mistakes. You don't have a great tolerance for the lack of physicality that shows up on tape. And the miscues that you make are costly. So as a coach, what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out which guys can you count on to fill certain roles. And if you anticipate a guy playing a role and he disappoints early, you move on to the next because the patience isn't going to be there, because the goal is to have this team humming starting in week 1. And the only way you can do it is to put the best performers in positions to have the greatest impact on the game. So making sure that they are ready to be the playmakers. So when I talk about putting the pieces of the puzzle together, offensively, it's evaluating and determining the pecking order. So as I look at this team, like we can talk about Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence touches the ball on every play. But who are the guys who need to get a requisite amount of touches to positively impact the game in a way that tilts the field towards the Jaguars? Coming into training camp, I would say Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk are 1A and 1B when it comes to the marquee players in the passing game. Travis Etienne is the marquee player when it comes to being a mixed player as a runner and a receiver. I would say after that, Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. in some way, shape, or form, they have to make contributions in the passing game in terms of making big plays and really stretching the field. So those aforementioned three can make plays: Etienne, Ingram, and Kirk. So Davis and Brian Thomas Jr., they have to kind of figure out where they fit in, and the coaches have to figure out how can we get them the ball enough so we can lighten the load on the other three. It's going to be really important, not only in training camp practice, those joint practices, to kind of see what routes are really good for Gabe Davis, which routes are really good for Brian Thomas Jr. How can we incorporate that into the basic offense? And then how can you utilize both of those guys to make life easy for Ingram, Kirk, and Etienne? So putting the pieces of the puzzle together is going to be about, in these joint practices and some of the preseason games, finding what fits which personnel so that you can begin to shrink the list of play calls. So when you walk in week 1 against the Miami Dolphins, you feel great about what the team can do. You feel great about the play calls that you have for the certain players. And man, there's not a lot of thinking. There's just you're just going through the checklist and making sure that this offense is humming. From the offensive line standpoint, it's about building the chemistry. We talk about putting the pieces of the puzzle together. We're going to assume that Mitch Morse is going to be a starting center. You're going to have Brandon Scherf on the right. You can have Anton Harrison on the outside. On the other side, Ezra Cleveland at left guard, Cam Robinson. Now, how do we feel about that offensive line? That's what the coaches are going to ask. Do we feel great about the way the puzzle pieces look with the offensive line? Who's the first man off the bench? Is that Walker Little? If it is Walker Little, is Walker Little just our swing tackle, or are we considering moving him in to guard? Who are the other players that can contribute? What do we feel about Luke Fortner? All of those things play into the evaluation because you want to make sure that you have the right pieces of the puzzle together. And if one of the pieces doesn't fit, who's the next piece to come in to be able to do it? As we're looking at this team in training camp, a lot of that is the evaluation and the execution of those guys. Can they get it right? Can we go from evaluating the players to now, can we get the execution that we want to see so this team can hit it running in week 1? Defensively, this is probably the one where we want to keep an eye on the defense because they have the biggest adjustment. We have a bunch of players playing in a new scheme. And even though they spent the spring doing a lot of the fundamentals and those things, it's much different when we try and get to it. And it's time to get ready to play. Ryan Nielsen and the staff have looked at all the players. They kind of experimented and flirted with, we can put this guy here. Well, now you want to narrow your focus and begin to put those guys in those roles that you expect them to play. So all of the bouncing around with the linebackers, you'll see some of that reduce as you're beginning to think about how you want to play games with those players. Devin Lloyd, is he going to be a Sam linebacker? Is he a Will linebacker? I know he's bounced around and played all three throughout the spring, but what is his role going to be? And can we get him more reps doing the things that he's going to be asked to do during the regular season? How does Chad Muma fit in the evaluation? Is he first man off the bench? Is he starting? Are they going to play a base defense where they really have 3 linebackers on the field? If so, where does he line up with the starters if you have 3 linebackers on the field? Foye Oluokun, you kind of know what his role is going to be. He's going to be the traffic cop. He's going to control it in the middle. So those things will play out. On the front line, Josh Hines Allen, Trayvon Walker, Eric Armstead. Okay, how do they fit? They're going from what we had at one point, a 5-man defensive line, to now a 4-man defensive line. Does Trayvon Walker play outside extensively? Does he slide inside and play the nickel? As we flirted with those things throughout the spring, well, now we need to start making some decisions on how we're going to do this, what it's going to look like when we play, how can we maximize the pass rush while making sure everyone is comfortable in their respective roles. That's a big part of the first couple of weeks of training camp, making sure that the pieces of the puzzle are properly aligned and they properly fit to complement one another, not only within a unit, but within the not only in terms of the position group, but in terms of the entire unit. How does the pass rush help the secondary and those things? Speaking of the secondary, that's really where we're really trying to figure out where the puzzle pieces fit. So we can talk about Tyson Campbell being on one side, Ron Darby being on the other side, but now it's about who is the nickel player. Are we going to play with Darnell Savage? Is Antonio Johnson in consideration? Jerry Jones? Who is going to be the guy when they go nickel, 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 and they put the 5 fingers up? Who is going to play nickel? How many different variations of nickel are they going to play? Are they going to play little nickel where you have maybe a corner in, so Jerry Jones comes in to be the guy? Are they going to play big nickel when now they have 3 safeties on the field and 2 corners? If that is possible, does Dewey come in the game? If Dewey comes in the game, is he in the slot or is he in the back end? What does that mean for Andre Cisco? What does that mean for Antonio Johnson and Darnell Savage, who are going to play these roles? We speculated about these conversations and these decisions the entire spring. Well, now we got to put it into action. And the only way to do it is, man, quickly, when we're going these live team drills, and we've talked about before, hey, we're just teaching and learning. Well, now they're competitive. And those mistakes and those plays that you make, they carry more weight in terms of the evaluation and the determination of the pecking order when it relates to those things. The final piece of the puzzle that we got to talk about is the safety position. I'm a huge believer in Andre Cisco. I think he's going to have a breakout season where people around the league are going to talk about his instincts, awareness, and those things. How do the Jags coaching staff unlock that potential? He's one of the best ball hawks that I've seen in terms of watching him come out of Syracuse, watching the plays that he's made early in his career. How can they help him take his game to the next level? To me, he's one of the biggest keys to this defense playing well. Want to see, where do they fit him in? How do they utilize him? Does he get some special roles and assignments that allow him to play to his strengths as a takeaway specialist? That will be determined throughout the course of training camp. So it's really important that you get the pieces of the puzzle together, make sure that everyone is very comfortable in their roles. More importantly, everyone is in a role that plays to their strength as a player. If you do those things, you can get great results. So we talked about it. First thing is reestablish the culture. Second thing is put the pieces of the puzzle together. The third thing, and maybe the most important part of it, get to the starting line healthy and ready to go. It is an underrated aspect of training camp. We talk about the grind. We talk about a hard training camp, physicality, toughness, tackling, making sure that you're giving the players a level of enough adversity that they can begin to get the proper mindset to be able to win these tough competitive games in the fourth quarter. But it's that fine line that you have to kind of balance on. You want to be physical. You want to get them ready. You want to grind them. You want to take them to the dark side. But you want to make sure that you get to the first game with all of your weapons ready to go. You need Trevor. You need Travis Etienne. You need all your weapons on the outside, your playmakers. You want your defensive starters, Josh Hines, Allen, and Trayvon Walker. You want all those guys available. So how do you concoct a plan? How do you put together a plan that allows them to get the work that they need while keeping them fresh and focused on week 1? That might mean, hey, we're going to play our starters during joint practices, but we're not going to play them a lot during the preseason. We, as fans, we may not see the number ones a lot. We may see them get some work early, but it may be in the more controlled environment of joint practices as opposed to, hey, we're going to give them a lot of work in games. Doug Peterson's job, particularly when you seeing how the injury bug has impacted this team, his job is to make sure, hey, I got to have everybody ready to go. And it's that fine line between giving them enough, I would say, like full speed work to where the execution in week 1 is ready to go against, hey, man, I'm exposing these guys to 25, 30 plays in preseason. You can't predict when anything bad will going to happen. But, man, I certainly would like to have all my guys ready to go. It's something that he and the coaching staff will have to figure out. They have to map out how to script it, the number of plays that the ones get, not only in practice, but also in those preseason games, to ensure that you get to the starting line, man, with all your horses. Because this team, when healthy, this team can compete with anybody. The injuries hurt this team last year. You want to avoid that. I think the number one goal, man, let's get to the starting line ready to go with the weapons that you have in place. Because if you get that done, this team is going to knock off some of the top teams, and this is going to be a team that is talked about. But the only way that you can do it is to have a really good look. One, you got to knock on wood. Get a little lucky that no one has a little crazy injury in camp. Two, you got to have a plan that keeps everyone focused in terms of like, we want to get in, get out. We want to get our work done. But once we're done getting the work that we need to get done, I want them out the game. I want the pads off. I want them on the sideline. I want them chilling because I want them available when they take on the Miami Dolphins in week 1. So as we think about training camp, let's just keep those 3 objectives in mind. Reestablish the culture, smart, fast, and physical from the Jaguars in every aspect. Let's put the pieces of the puzzle together to make sure that you got the right players in the right roles in the right scheme so they can do the things that play to the strengths of their own individual talents. And then the final thing, man, keep everyone fresh, fit, and focused, ready to go in. Because if you get to the starting line healthy with all your weapons in place, Jacksonville Jaguars is going to be a really, really good team. So that's what I'm looking for. Can't wait to get down to Jacksonville on Wednesday to see it kick it off. We'll have more content available for you. I'll give you some of my observations, some quick takes on what I've seen as Doug Peterson and the boys get ready to go to camp. Make sure you keep everything locked on the Bleav Network. Make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Continue to tell a friend as we continue to expand our community. Check out all the other great content that we have on YouTube at the Bleav Network, Fubo, some of the shows that we have being streamed and broadcast. Check all that stuff out, man. The community is really growing. We're really excited to be a part of it. More excitedly, we're excited for the regular season and training camp to kick off. So until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks. This is Bleav in Jaguars. We will see you later.